There comes a moment in your life when you look in the mirror and barely recognize the soul staring back at you, not because you have changed, but because the world convinced you to abandon yourself just to survive it. You smiled when your heart was breaking. You stayed silent when your spirit was screaming. You gave love to people who only came to take pieces of you. And somewhere along the way, you started believing that your pain was proof that you were unworthy. But listen to me carefully. Your suffering was never evidence that you were small. It was evidence that you survived what was meant to destroy you. And there is something powerful about a person who survives without becoming cruel. There is something holy about a human being who keeps their softness in a hard world. You see, self-respect is not loud. It does not walk into the room demanding applause. It does not beg to be chosen. It does not chase people down dark roads hoping to be loved. Self-respect stands quietly, calmly, with dignity, and it says, I will not abandon myself just because others fail to see my worth. That kind of strength changes everything. Because the day you begin respecting yourself, the world begins responding differently to your presence. Not because you became arrogant, but because your soul finally stopped kneeling for acceptance. I want you to think about all the times you betrayed yourself just to keep someone comfortable. The phone calls you answered while your heart was exhausted. The apologies you gave for things that were never your fault. The dreams you buried because somebody told you they were unrealistic. The tears you wiped away in private while pretending you were fine in public. Oh. You mastered survival, but survival is not the same as living. And too many people spend their entire lives surviving rooms that their spirit was never meant to stay inside. You were not born to shrink. You were not born to apologize for your brilliance. You were not born to become smaller so insecure people could feel taller. You were born carrying storms and sunlight in the same soul, and that is your power. There is a quote I want you to carry with you tonight. Never negotiate your worth with people committed to misunderstanding your value. Read that again inside your spirit. Because one of the saddest things in this world is watching good people exhaust themselves trying to prove they deserve basic love. You do not have to audition for respect. You do not have to bleed for acceptance. And you do not have to set yourself on fire just to keep somebody else warm. Real love does not require your destruction. Real love nourishes. It protects. It honors. And the moment you finally understand that, you stop chasing people who only loved your silence. You know, some of the strongest people you will ever meet are carrying invisible scars. The woman smiling at the grocery store while her heart is grieving. The man sitting alone in his car trying to gather the strength to walk back into a difficult life. The child inside every adult still waiting for somebody to say, you were enough all along. We are all carrying something. But inner strength is not pretending the pain never happened. Inner strength is looking directly at your wounds and deciding they will not become your identity. That is courage, not perfection. Courage. The courage to wake up after disappointment. The courage to trust again after betrayal. The courage to keep building after life reduced everything to ashes. And sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is walking away from chaos. Walking away from manipulation, walking away from environments that punish your peace. People will call you selfish for protecting your energy. Let them. Because drained souls cannot build meaningful lives. You must protect your peace like your future depends on it, because it does. There is another truth nobody talks about enough. Discipline is a form of self-love. Yes. Discipline, not punishment, not obsession. Discipline is waking up and keeping promises to yourself. It is choosing growth over excuses. It is understanding that healing is not always comfortable. Some days healing feels like loneliness. Some days growth feels like grief. Some days becoming stronger feels like breaking apart. But do not confuse discomfort with failure. The caterpillar must dissolve before it becomes the butterfly. And perhaps this season of your life is not destroying you. Perhaps it is transforming you. I know there were nights you cried silently because you felt forgotten. I know there were mornings you questioned whether your life truly mattered. I know there were moments you carried burdens so heavy you thought your spirit would collapse beneath them. But hear me clearly, you are still here. After everything, still here. And that means there is something inside you stronger than every storm you survived. People often think strength looks like muscles, like money, like power. But some of the strongest souls are simply those who kept loving life after life broke their heart. That is strength. To remain tender in a brutal world, to remain hopeful after disappointment, to keep believing your life has meaning when darkness whispers otherwise. You must never underestimate the miracle of your endurance. There is greatness inside people who refuse to quit on themselves. And one day, the pain you cried about in private will become the wisdom that heals. Somebody else in public, your scars will speak, your survival will inspire. Your story will become proof that broken things can rise again. That is why you cannot give up now. The world needs people who have suffered and still chose kindness. The world needs people who understand struggle and still choose compassion. People who know what it feels like to be unseen and therefore make others feel visible. You have no idea how powerful your presence can become once you stop doubting yourself. Because confidence is not walking into a room believing you are better than others. Confidence is walking into a room no longer needing to prove your worth at all. And that kind of peace, that kind of unshakable peace, comes from finally understanding who you are beyond your wounds. You are not your failures. You are not the names people called you in moments of anger. You are not the rejection, not the abandonment, not the mistakes. You are the lesson that survived them all. Remember this. The strongest roots grow in the darkest soil. So if life has buried you, perhaps it is because something extraordinary is preparing to grow. Do not rush your becoming. Oak trees do not apologize for taking time to rise. Mountains are not built overnight, and souls are not strengthened without weathering difficult seasons. Be patient with yourself. You are rebuilding, and rebuilding requires grace. Sometimes you will stumble. Sometimes fear will return. Sometimes old wounds will whisper old lies. But you do not have to believe every thought that enters your mind. Pain speaks loudly. Truth speaks calmly. And the truth is this: you are worthy of love without performance. You are worthy of rest without guilt. You are worthy of respect without explanation. Never forget that. Not when life becomes heavy. Not when loneliness visits your door. Not when the world rewards noise and overlooks depth. Because deep souls are often misunderstood before they are appreciated. But eventually, the people meant for your life will recognize the beauty of your spirit without asking you to dilute it. Until then, protect your heart, protect your peace, protect your vision, and most importantly, protect the relationship you have with yourself. Because when a person finally learns to stand alone with dignity, they stop begging the world for permission to exist. And that is the moment they become unstoppable. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because they finally understand that no rejection, no betrayal, no failure has the power to define a soul that has learned how to stand in its own light. And maybe tonight, while the world sleeps and silence fills the room, this is the moment you finally decide that your life deserves more than survival. Maybe this is the moment you stop returning to places that only know how to break you. Maybe this is the moment you begin becoming the person your younger self prayed you would one day become. Because deep inside you already know the version of yourself waiting on the other side of fear is someone the world has not yet fully met. And when that person finally rises and speaks and walks with the quiet confidence of a soul that has endured the fire and refused to turn into ashes, there will be no force on earth capable of convincing you ever again that you were born to live beneath your true worth. And that is when you will finally understand that the greatest victory was never about proving yourself to others, but about learning, at long last, how to stop abandoning the person within you who had been waiting all this time to be chosen first before the next chapter begins and the next door opens and the next version of your destiny starts to whisper your name in the dark just before you finally realize that healing was never about becoming someone else. It was about returning to yourself. Returning to the voice you silenced, returning to the dreams you buried beneath disappointment, returning to the soul that the world tried so hard to harden. You spent so many years asking, will they choose me? Will they stay? Will they finally see my value? But maturity changes the question. One day you wake up, and instead of asking whether others will honor you, you begin asking whether you are honoring yourself. That shift changes everything. Because when self-respect enters your life, confusion begins to leave. You stop forcing conversations that feel one-sided. You stop chasing people who keep running from your love. You stop shrinking inside rooms where your spirit cannot breathe. And suddenly, peace becomes more attractive than attention. You begin understanding that not every connection deserves access to your heart. Not every apology deserves another chance. Not every person deserves front-row seats to your energy. That is not bitterness. That is wisdom. There is a difference. Bitterness closes the heart. Wisdom protects it. And some of you listening tonight have been carrying wounds that nobody ever apologized for. Wounds from childhood. Wounds from rejection. Wounds from betrayal. Wounds from constantly feeling like you had to earn love through suffering. You became the strong one because life never gave you the option to fall apart. You learned how to comfort others while secretly bleeding yourself. You learned how to survive disappointment with a smile. You became everybody's shelter while standing in the rain alone. But hear this carefully, just because you can carry pain gracefully does not mean you deserve to carry it forever. Some burdens are not yours anymore. Some heartbreaks expired years ago, but you kept resurrecting them in your memory. Some people left your life physically, yet their voices still live rent-free inside your mind. And those voices, those cruel voices, have been whispering lies to you for far too long. You are not enough. You will never succeed. You are too broken. You are too late. You are too damaged to begin again. Those are not truths. Those are echoes from moments that hurt you. And pain has a way of sounding convincing when it speaks often enough. But you must learn to separate your identity from your suffering. Because a painful chapter is not the entire story. A storm is not the whole sky. You know, there are people right now living inside prisons with no walls. Prisons built from fear, from regret, from shame, from memories they cannot forgive themselves for. And the tragedy is not that they failed. The tragedy is that they stopped believing they deserved another chance after they failed. Listen to me. Your mistakes are chapters, not your name. Every great soul has walked through valleys of doubt. Every strong person has moments where they question whether they could continue. Even the tallest trees bend in violent winds. Strength is not never breaking. Strength is learning that even broken pieces can create beautiful things. I once heard someone say, "Rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine for itself." And there is something profound hidden inside those words. Your life was never meant to end at your pain. You survived for a reason. Your wisdom matters. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Somebody out there is going to survive because you refuse to quit. Somebody will hear your truth one day and finally feel less alone. Somebody will see your resilience and realize that healing is possible for them too. But first, you must stop speaking to yourself like an enemy. The way you talk to yourself matters. Some of you have mastered self-criticism so deeply that you cannot even accept compliments without discomfort. You punish yourself for resting. You call yourself weak for feeling emotions. You expect perfection from a human soul that is simply trying its best to survive difficult seasons. And meanwhile, you offer compassion to everybody except yourself. Why? Why is your heart so gentle with others but so unforgiving toward you? You cannot heal in an environment where your own mind becomes the weapon. You must learn to become a safe place for yourself. A safe place. Imagine that. Not a battlefield. Not a prison. Not a courtroom where every mistake becomes evidence against your worth. But a safe place. A place where you are allowed to grow imperfectly. A place where you are allowed to rest. A place where you are allowed to begin again without shame. Because growth is messy. Transformation is uncomfortable. And the strongest souls often look lost right before they discover who they truly are. That is why you cannot judge your life by temporary darkness. Seeds grow underground before anybody sees evidence of life. And perhaps your greatest growth has been happening in silence. Perhaps the reason people underestimated you is because they mistook your quiet rebuilding for weakness. But there is power in silent growth, power in choosing discipline when nobody is watching, power in healing privately, instead of performing pain publicly, power in waking up every morning and trying again despite everything that tried to crush your spirit yesterday. Never underestimate the courage it takes to start over, to trust again after betrayal, to dream again after disappointment, to love yourself after years of neglecting your own soul. That is bravery. And sometimes bravery looks ordinary from the outside. Sometimes bravery is simply getting out of bed when depression tells you not to. Sometimes bravery is setting boundaries with people who drain your peace. Sometimes bravery is saying, I deserve better after years of settling for less. You know what destroys many people? Not failure, exhaustion. The exhaustion of pretending, the exhaustion of carrying emotional weight in silence, the exhaustion of constantly pouring into others while your own soul runs empty. That is why rest is sacred, not laziness, not weakness. Sacred, because even the earth rests at night, even oceans have. Tides, even nature understands balance. Yet you keep trying to survive without pausing long enough to hear your own spirit breathe. Slow down sometimes, not because you are quitting, but because your soul deserves to be heard above the noise of survival. There is wisdom in silence. Silence reveals things distractions try to hide. It reveals who truly values you. It reveals what no longer belongs in your life. It reveals the difference between loneliness and peace, and sometimes the hardest lesson you will ever learn is that peace feels unfamiliar when chaos has been your normal for too long. Some people will leave your life the moment you stop overextending yourself for them. Let them leave. Anybody who only appreciates your exhaustion was never truly honoring your humanity. You are not a machine built to endlessly sacrifice yourself for acceptance. You are a living soul. A soul deserving of tenderness, of purpose, of joy. And joy, real joy, is not found in pretending your life is perfect. It is found in finally making peace with who you are becoming. There is a quiet confidence that emerges when you stop competing with others and start aligning with yourself. You walk differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself differently. Not because your problems disappeared, but because your spirit stopped depending on external validation to feel valuable. That is freedom. The freedom to exist without apology. The freedom to say no without guilt. The freedom to outgrow versions of yourself that no longer fit your future. And understand this clearly. Outgrowing people does not make you cruel. Sometimes your healing will offend those who benefited from your brokenness. Sometimes your boundaries will upset people who were comfortable crossing them. But protecting your peace is not selfish, it is necessary. Because the older you become, the more you realize that life is not just about achievement, it is about alignment. Alignment between your values and your actions, between your soul and your choices, between the life you dream about and the habits you practice every day. And the truth is, many people pray for change while remaining loyal to the behaviors destroying them. Transformation requires honesty, painful honesty, the kind of honesty that forces you to admit when you are settling, when you are procrastinating, when fear has been disguising itself as comfort, because comfort can become a cage, a beautiful cage, a familiar cage, but still, cage. And there comes a moment where your spirit becomes tired of living beneath its potential, a moment where your future begins pulling on you stronger than your past. That moment changes lives, because suddenly excuses lose their power. You stop waiting for perfect timing. You stop waiting for universal permission. You stop waiting for confidence before taking action. And you finally understand that courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward while fear trembles beside you. There are dreams inside you that have survived years of doubt, dreams that refuse to die even after rejection, dreams that kept whispering your name in quiet moments when the world became still, dreams that return every time your heart remembers there is more waiting for you beyond the life you settled into. Do not ignore those whispers. Your spirit recognizes places your mind is still afraid to travel. And maybe the reason you feel restless lately, maybe the reason ordinary things no longer satisfy your soul, maybe the reason you cannot keep pretending anymore is because the person you are becoming is already trying to introduce themselves to you before everything changes and before the doors you once begged to open no longer matter, because you will finally understand that some delays were protecting you, some endings were guiding you, and some storms arrive not to ruin your path but to clear away every false version of yourself that could not walk with you into the life that has been. Quietly waiting for you beyond the fear, beyond the heartbreak, beyond the nights you almost gave up, beyond the version of you that still sometimes wonders if you are truly worthy of becoming everything you once looked at from a distance and thought belonged only to other people, until one day you finally stop asking whether you are capable and start realizing you always were. The truth is, your power was never missing. It was buried beneath fear, buried beneath rejection, buried beneath years of listening to voices that benefited from your self-doubt. But buried is not the same as broken. A seed buried in darkness still carries life within it. And maybe that is what this season has been all along. Not punishment. Preparation. Preparation for the version of you that no longer trembles at rejection. Preparation for the version of you that walks away from disrespect without explanation. Preparation for the version of you that finally understands that self-respect is the foundation upon which every meaningful life is built, because when you respect yourself, you stop accepting crumbs where you deserve a feast. You stop shrinking your dreams to fit inside other people's limitations. You stop betraying your spirit just to avoid standing alone. And yes, standing alone can feel terrifying at first, but there are worse things than solitude. There is losing yourself while trying to keep everyone else. There is waking up one day and realizing you built a life that looks acceptable on the outside while your soul quietly starves on the inside. Do not let that become your story. You deserve a life that feels true. A life where your laughter is genuine. A life where your peace is protected. A life where your purpose is stronger than your fear. And hear me, you do not have to become perfect before you begin. You do not have to erase every scar before you step into your greatness. You do not have to wait until fear disappears. Fear may walk beside you for a while, but it does not get to drive your destiny anymore. There are people listening right now who almost gave up on themselves. People who smiled publicly while privately questioning whether they had the strength to continue. People who survived nights so dark they thought the morning would never come. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still fighting, still searching for light despite everything that tried to convince you darkness was permanent. That matters. Do not overlook the miracle of your survival. Some people lost themselves in the pain. Some people surrendered to bitterness. Some people allowed hardship to turn their hearts cold. But you are still reaching toward hope. That is strength beyond words. There is something extraordinary that happens when a human being finally decides, I will no longer speak against myself. I will no longer abandon my own soul. I will no longer allow fear to dictate the size of my life. That decision changes generations. Because healed people heal. Strong people inspire strength. And people who learn to love themselves properly stop teaching others that mistreatment is acceptable. You become an example. Not because you are flawless, but because you kept rising. And let me tell you something powerful tonight. The world does not need another person pretending to have it all together. The world needs real people, honest people. People brave enough to carry both scars and wisdom at the same time. Your story has power because it is real. The tears were real. The heartbreak was real. The loneliness was real. But so is your resilience. So is your growth. So is the fire inside you that refuses to die. Never forget, diamonds are created under pressure. Stars shine brightest in darkness. And some of the most beautiful souls on earth were shaped by seasons they thought would destroy them. So if you are struggling right now, if you are rebuilding right now, if you are carrying pain nobody else can see, do not mistake your current season for your final destination. This is not the end of your story. This is the chapter where you discover your strength. This is the chapter where you stop apologizing for existing, where you stop settling for less than you deserve, where you finally understand that your worth was never dependent on who stayed, who left, who doubted you, or who failed to recognize your light. Your worth is inherent, untouchable, sacred. And once you truly understand that, you become dangerous to every force that once tried to control you through shame and fear, because a person who respects themselves cannot be easily manipulated. A person who knows their value cannot be easily diminished. A person who has survived their darkest night stops fearing temporary storms. That is who you are becoming. Someone stronger, someone wiser, someone unafraid to stand in their truth. So when you leave here tonight, walk differently, speak differently, carry yourself differently, not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. The certainty that you have survived too much to keep doubting yourself. The certainty that your dreams still matter. The certainty that your life has purpose even if the road ahead is unclear. And when fear returns, because sometimes it will, remember this: you have already survived days you once thought would break you. You have already walked through fire and remained standing. So trust yourself. Trust the wisdom your pain taught you. Trust the strength you earned in silence. Trust the future calling your name from beyond this difficult season. There is more waiting for you than you can currently see. More peace, more purpose, more love, more life. But you must be willing to meet it. You must be willing to rise. Do not spend the rest of your life waiting for permission to become who you were born to be. This world has enough people hiding. Be one of the rare souls who dares to fully live. Take the risk. Speak the truth. Protect your peace. Honor your worth. And never again reduce yourself to fit into spaces that cannot appreciate the magnitude of your spirit. Because one day, you will look back at this version of yourself, the tired version, the doubting version, the wounded version, and you will thank them for not giving up. You will thank them for surviving long enough to become the person standing in the light. And in that moment, you will finally understand the battle was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to introduce you to your power. So, stand tall now, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, even if the road ahead feels uncertain. Stand tall anyway, because there is greatness inside you waiting to be unleashed. There is a future inside you begging for a chance. There is a stronger version of yourself watching your choices right now and hoping you finally believe in what you are capable of becoming. And if nobody told you this lately, I believe in you. I believe in your ability to rise after heartbreak. I believe in your ability to rebuild after loss. I believe in the quiet warrior living inside your soul. Now it is time for you to believe in yourself too. Go forward with courage. Go forward with dignity. Go forward with the understanding that your life is valuable beyond measure. And no matter how difficult the journey becomes, never surrender your self-respect for temporary acceptance. Protect your inner strength like it is sacred, because it is. Good luck on your journey. May you walk into your future with fearless faith, unshakable peace, and the kind of confidence that no storm can steal. Thank you for listening. Thank you for surviving. And thank you for refusing to give up on the extraordinary person you are becoming.